There's been a lot of discussion here lately as to, it's not really the new year and things. And for some cultures, yes, the new year varies, and it's not against any religion things or any of that. Most countries that celebrate different New Years and most cultures that celebrate different New Years, it's based on the harvest and the harvesters and when their fall is and when their winter is, and the seasons vary from country to country. Like, and God made it that way because that way, as the world here, our growing seasons are not the same. So when one country's growing season is over, another some country's growing season is just getting started. And when our winter is in the middle and we call ours the new year here, another country may be in the middle of summer. And then when their winter comes around and they say the new year begins, is different than ours. Um, Easiest way to look at some of that is the crops and the harvest times. And it's pretty simple. I mean, the like take the crop calendar for soybeans. Soybeans are are a large global thing, but the top four producers of soybeans in this world are Brazil, United States, Argentina, and China. And each of these countries, the soybean production calendar is different, and that's because their seasons are different. Like each of these four countries, like Brazil, the planting season begins in mid-September. That's their spring, and it ends in December. That's their fall. The harvest begins, or well, no, I take it. I said that wrong. In Brazil, the planting the season begins mid-September and ends at the end of December. So that is the end of their springtime. Um, and their harvest begins the first day of March and ends in May. The Brazilian harvest is important for supplying food for other countries, especially China. In the United States, the soybean crop is planted in May and June, and the harvest is between September and October. In Argentina, the planting window for soybeans is November and January, which would be their spring. And then the harvest begins between March and June, which would be their fall. And like China, there's they plant between April and May, which would be their spring, and then the harvest takes place between September and October. And you can look at corn, their fall, like the United States. Um, Planting begins in April through May, and harvesting it is September and November. That's our fall. Brazil, mid-September to the end of December, they plant. Harvest is in February and June. Um, Argentina, September and November, they plant corn, and they harvest between March and June. So that's their fall harvest is March and June. So after their fall harvest, Argentina would go into their winter. You take the cotton. There's another one, cotton. Um, Cotton is planted between April in June in China and harvested in September and October. India, it's planted between March and July, harvest in September and December. These the fall harvest, as a lot of people keep saying, are part of the calendar and part of what bases the calendar for things. That's that is true. It is very true. But that calendar originally varied from country to country, and it's not that anyone's trying to deceive anyone or anyone's trying to pull the wool over someone's eyes. It's just that the whole entire harvest varies from different parts of the world to different parts of the world. Um, and that changes when they also would celebrate their new year. Like Mexico celebrates their new year once at a certain time. We celebrate our new years at a certain time. Every country celebrates their new year differently um, due to the harvest, due to their fall harvest. And let's see, wheat. Wheat's grown in a lot more places. Europe. Uh, okay, so wheat they plant theirs September and October in Europe, so that would be their springtime. Um, harvest is in July and August. Russia plants a lot of wheat, and their time for planting wheat is in August to October, which would be their spring. It flowers between April and beginning of July. They harvest in July and August, which is fairly close to the same as Europe. A little bit different. Europe starts in September planting, whereas Russia starts in August planting. Ukraine, they plant mid-August to the end of September, harvest July and August. United States, for our winter wheat, we plant at the end of August to October, harvest in June. But the United States grows a lot of winter wheat. With the spring harvest. So, harvest on the wheat. Cocoa requires a warm and humid climate. Climate change, such as drought, let's see, Ghana, Ghana, yes. Ghana are the main cocoa producers in the world, responsible for about 60% of the global production. Sugar harvest. But anyways, that is basically why so many countries vary on what they consider to be the end of the seasons, the end of the years, the fall harvest, and all that, because it's different. It's not our fall here in America is not the same as when fall is in China. Our fall here is not the same as it is in Brazil. The the times are different because of the climate and the location. if a fall harvest is different than our fall harvest, which actually works out good in some ways because, especially for like corn and soybeans and wheat, um, our production doesn't, for our harvest, doesn't fall the same as other countries. So that actually helps the world supply of it because their harvest is different times than ours, and it's not all coming at the same time. I mean, think about it. If the world market for corn was all harvested at the same time, so everybody in the entire world harvested corn at exactly the same time, their fall was the same as everywhere else, and then that would be like saying, okay, everybody's calendars are all the same, everybody's falls are all the same, everybody's springs are all the same. If that actually happened, if that was the way it was, then everybody harvests their corn at the same time. Well, that would mean all the corn in all the world would come in all at once, and then the entire world would have to ration those corn supplies to last the whole entire year. Whereas the way it is now, one country harvests all their corn, and that gets distributed out, and then maybe as that part gets a little lower, some in other countries harvesting their corn, and then that helps boost it back up to where it's still all there. So I believe that was part of God's design right there to make it to where all the seasons were not the same throughout the world, so as to be able to feed everyone and to be able to make that supply available year round. You know, I believe that was God's design there. That, you know, like the corn and soybeans and wheat would not be harvested at the same time as everybody all around the world. That way, God could supply everyone's needs. And I mean, I'm not a scholar on all of that as far as, you know, the times and all of that, you know, exactly. But I believe that God had a plan there. He knew what he was doing. God knew very well what he was doing. And he made it that way so that the world could supply everyone's needs throughout the entire year. But that also means that many countries celebrate their fall differently, their spring differently, their summer times differently, their winter times differently, because the seasons are different throughout the world. Anyways, that was a simple little thing. I just wanted to talk a little bit about it. I don't believe that. I don't believe that anyone's calendars are necessarily trying to deceive or lie to each other. I believe that the calendars throughout the world and throughout the times have changed simply because different countries' seasons are in a different time. Like the original calendar back in biblical times was based off of their season, their harvests, their times that when they would plant their crops and when they would harvest their crops. That's how their festivals were done. And their times were different than what our times are over here because our fall is a different time than their fall was. And things, you know, each country, each region, each part of the world is different. And I believe God made it that way. God most definitely made it that way to be able to supply everyone's needs, everyone's ability to supply. That way it wasn't all bunched together all at one time. Okay. Well, I'm going to end that, and that was good. Thank you.